This is the Last Gentleman podcast. We are here today with New York City comedian JL Cauvin. You may have seen him on Anna Carolla recently, or on the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. If not, you probably listened to his podcast Righteous Pricks with JL Cauvin, or have watched his parody videos on YouTube. JL, you're on the Last Gentleman podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you, my friend. Really excited to talk to you. We were watching before we came on here.
Well, you should be.
We were watching some of your sketches on YouTube. Now, let me ask you a question about those. They're very funny. I watched you rip apart Key and Peele, go after Louis C.K. a little bit. Where do you where do you film those in New York City? How do you get the space in New York to do that?
There have been various places. I mean, throughout. I mean, my apartment has been for some of my sketches. I've used a couple of comedy clubs in the city. The Stand and the Laughing Devil have been the most receptive to letting me film. And there's also a large studio space that most actors and comedians are familiar with in New York, Ripley Greer Studios. So there's just relatively modest hourly rental fee. Yeah. So if you need like an office space or whatever, you can kind of make do with the stuff they have.
Now, you've ripped apart, like we said, Key and Peele. I've listened to a couple episodes of your podcast. I think it's amazing. And what I really like about it is the no fucks given attitude.
I encourage your listeners not to. The last couple haven't been amazing, but the bulk of the 140 plus have been. But there have been a couple stinkers recently because I've been working a day job and haven't lined up as many guests as I've liked. So I've had like some decent solo episodes, but this last week was just like, here's some content because I promised you shit every Tuesday.
I did really like your Lady Ghostbusters episode where you compared the making of a Lady Ghostbusters to ISIS.
Well, thank you. Somebody had to say it.
I agree.
It made me furious that they would take an institution like the Ghostbusters and I guess inevitably cast Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. For sure, 100% they're going to be in that movie.
Yeah, no, I know. It's that's, to me, it's like, I think Harold Ramis saw this coming and simply died rather than be alive. It's not like Kristen Wiig and Melissa, although Kristen Wiig more than Melissa McCarthy I find to be a one-trick pony, and it's a trick that I don't necessarily buy into.
Yeah.
But you're talking about one of the great comedies of all time featuring some of the great comedy minds of all time and jokes that still sort of hold up today because of the dry wit. And then it's just being turned into some sort of, can I curse?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just some sort of horseshit, I think, quasi-agenda. Like there's this movement to kind of go overboard and just be like, look, women can do anything. Like, they can be just as funny. And it's like, sure, they can be. They're just usually not.
Oh, God.
Now, you take these, and I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, especially that episode where you talked about how they're going to replace the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man with some sort of period reference. Because I think that's...
Oh, no, Slimer.
Slimer
is going to be red. He's going to be red, and he is going to be... At least there will be one menstruation pun when, like, Melissa McCarthy gets soaked by red Slimer.
I kind of think that instead of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, we'll see a giant floating tampon with a little bit of menstruational blood, which will destroy the city.
Absolutely.
And they'll talk about feminism and such. Do you get, like, you go hard at certain iconic institutions, like you went hard at Derek Jeter, Louis C.K. What kind of hate mail do you get?
They say that the heroes of America save that for really anonymous YouTube comments. Like, not many people really direct their hate at me. I think being 6'7", 270 also helps in that regard. But it's, it's comedy is one of those funny things to me. And this is, I've been doing it 11 and a half years. And a few years ago, I hit a wall, not creatively, but just in terms of where my career was going. And it led to some frustration. But that frustration, I tried to push rather than bitch and moan, which I had kind of been doing for a little while. And I would write some provocative and some decent blogs about it, but I wasn't really creating anything out of that frustration. And I just noticed that the comedy community has become, because of social media and all the kind of opportunities that abound for certain people, a real circle jerk of self-congratulations and like ass kissing. So I just thought to myself, like, I didn't get into comedy to be everybody else's cheerleader. I did it because I'm funny and I want to create, humor for people. So the Louis C.K. thing was kind of the beginning of a turn for me. It's like a WWE superstar turning heel.
Yeah.
Except I was never a superstar. I just went right to heel. But the CK thing, because I kept watching, waiting for Louis C.K., and this is, I always feel like I have to qualify what I'm saying, but I always go, comedians love ripping apart, and I'm a Democrat, I'm a left of center guy, but it gets boring hearing comedians just trash conservatives, trash certain comedians like Dane Cook and Carlos Mencia, trash religion, and it's like you think you're still bashing these sacred cows, but it's like, been there, done that. Take a real stand. George Carlin did what you did 40 years ago when it was a little more provocative. Now you're retreading the same area. So I thought, I was just kind of like, let me take on, and it's not, some of it is a little manufactured, especially for the podcast. Sometimes I'm just like, well, I might go a little more extreme than I actually believe, but I might, think Derek Jeter's overrated, but I'll like ham it up for the podcast for humor purposes. But with CK, it was just one of those things where I was like, this guy is the new sacred cow of comedy, but because he's in comedy, nobody's saying shit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I just don't see it. Like, I watch Bill Burr and I watch Louis C.K. and I go, in my head, I'm going, not even close. Burr should be king. But you say that, and all of a sudden you're a hater, and you're this and that. So I said, well, fuck it, I'm a hater. Let's go all the way then.
Speaking of going after some sacred cows, I watched a clip you did, or I watched a sketch you did going after Key and Peele for essentially creating, on this podcast I called it blackface because it's essentially what I felt, and I'm a white guy, I'm an Italian dude. But I watched that and I thought, well, this is kind of just making fun of black people. It didn't feel like the jokes were at anyone else's expense. So going after, like, you go after these sacred cows in such a way. What's next? Where do you see? Is there anything else? Are there any other sacred cows you're looking forward to going after?
Well, I feel like the only way I could further harm my comedy career would be to walk into a comedy club with dynamite on my chest and scream "Allah Akbar." I feel like I have nothing left to prove except possibly criminal action.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm necessarily done with it, but I have a sketch. Like, for instance, I've written 2 new sketches. So one I'm going to be doing in November, one I'm going to do in December. The one in November is called All the Commissioner's Men, which is going to be a parody of the movie All the President's Men, about the Watergate break-in with Nixon and Woodward and Bernstein. And I know you guys are Canadian, but I hope that's a big enough thing that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Was that culturally insensitive enough? No. I hope you guys know about this huge story that happened in America,
Oh, JL, this is Kevin from The Last Gentleman. Sorry, go ahead.
From a TMZ sports angle. So, like, the Woodward and Bernstein are the grandsons of Woodward and Bernstein, and they're total douchebags. And instead of, like, whiskey, they're drinking Fireball shots as they, like, talk about the story. It's a very nuanced, detailed parody that I think would be more at home as on, like, an actual sketch show. Mm-hmm. But then the one I'm doing in December is called Comedy Draft, which is going to be about various entities in the comedy industry drafting their next prospect to become a star. Mm-hmm. So there'll be the Latin comedians, the mainstream comedy, the alt scene. We'll have, like, the number 1 pick. So it's going to be, that will be a little bit more of just another reminder that I think the comedy business is a bunch of whores. But yeah, I don't know that I have anybody specific that I, have an axe to grind, or it's not even like the thing is, it's not even personal. I don't know these people personally. I don't think they're bad people. I don't even think they're not, Key and Peele, I think they're talented people. I just don't like what they've chosen to do with their voice. They're doing what Chappelle kind of refused to do, which was, I'm sick and tired of white people enjoying the lampoonery of black people, even though Chappelle's show is a much, much more intelligent and nuanced show. But I feel like Key and Peele just said, fuck it, we'll do it. If the money's right, we'll pick up that shameful mantle.
It really seemed like Key and Peele were it was almost like Comedy Central wanted Chappelle to do Key and Peele, and he dropped out of Chappelle's show, and they just brought in Key and Peele. It really felt like everything I heard about Chappelle, being a huge Chappelle fan, him talking about how, I just couldn't do it anymore. Then I watched this show for the first time probably a few months ago, and it blew my mind because it looked like why Chappelle wanted to leave in the first place. I didn't think Chappelle was doing blackface or was being, I guess, like racially insensitive when he was doing his show, but I seen Key and Peele. It blew me away how shitty it was.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not going to lie, there have been a couple of Key and Peele sketches I've laughed at, but I've probably watched half a dozen episodes at this point, like enough to sample, and I've even seen people posting sketches that I'll watch. I'll go, okay, I like this guy. He liked this sketch. He posted it on his Facebook page. Let me watch it. And then I watch it, and I'm always disappointed. And even if it's not racially based, I'm always like, I truly don't understand. Like for me, a show like, as an example, Inside Amy Schumer, I find is hit and miss. But when it hits, it really hits with me. So it's worth me watching again. Like if there's 10 episodes in an Amy Schumer season, I will probably really enjoy 5. But that's a good enough percentage on a sketch show for me to keep it on my DVR and watch again. Whereas Key and Peele, I feel like I'm at like more of a 10% sketch rate where which isn't enough for me to go, I'll watch another episode because they might hit another home run this week.
Yeah, they're kind of more, I find them more like entertaining. I like how they sometimes will end their sketches in just the craziest manner, but I'm not laughing. I'm just kind of stoned and watching TV at that point. It's how it feels like. I want to talk a little bit about your background. You were assistant district attorney for a little bit. I was. In the Bronx. So your focus is on both law and comedy right now? Like, how do you go from a law background to comedian? Where do you want to go in the future as far as your career?
Well, some of my goals have already been achieved because of how exhausted I am. I've destroyed multiple relationships in the last couple of years, so that's good. That didn't get the laugh I was hoping for. I didn't realize that was going to take
You're talking to a room full of men with destroyed relationships. So there was just a silent nod of like, yeah.
We hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
I'll tell you how, I'll try to keep this as quick as possible, but obviously, I started doing comedy in law school in 2003, and it became I compared it to law school was like being a heroin addict, and comedy was methadone. So now I'm a methadone addict, and that's not much better. But you kind of get adjusted. It became a release, and for while I was working as an attorney, I kind of didn't have the perspective of keeping comedy as the fun part. You start to, it's a natural inclination, but the more success, the more exposure, the better you get, the more your goal becomes to make it your career, to make it your all, your source of income and the driving force in what you do day to day. So in 2009, I had switched to a law firm, so I was making good money, but I got laid off in 2009. I had a ton of money saved up. I was a year off of being on Craig Ferguson. So I said, fuck it, let's do it. Let me just go full time. I had just broken up with my fiance. She dumped me. I don't want to make it think like I was going, off the reservation and just going, this is my time. Get out of my life, bitch. That was all on her, that breakup. And I'll leave it at that for legal reasons. But in 2009, so I go full time. I'm getting a lot of road work, and then in 2010, the savings are starting to plummet. But I'm getting more road work in 2010, and then in 2011, as my money's really starting to dwindle, I'm still getting more road work. So I'm like, all right, at least I made the right choice. Like the career, the gigs, my calendar's more full and more full. This is the trajectory I want to be on. And then in 2012, somebody hit the brakes on everything because my gigs dropped for the first time, since 2008. And it was, then I had to then what you see is you start to a relationship ended that year, and it's frustration that I think a lot of comics can appreciate, which is you start to have no money or less money, or you can't, you're just making ends meet at some point, just waiting for the, hoping to make or get a break that changes your career's trajectory. And you start to become very frustrated with the people in your life who have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So when a girlfriend says, "Can we go out to dinner?" you start to go, "What the fuck? I have no money." And you're like, "Wait, oh shit, she just asked if we could go to dinner. She didn't ask if she could fuck your friend." Like, it's not, that's furious that you can't help it because, and this is, I'm sure women have this issue too, but not really. I'm just saying that to be politically correct. But as a man, you are expected, and you want to be the guy picking up the check. You want to be able to take your chick out. Like, if she's not a raging bitch, you want to do nice things for her. And if you can't, it just starts to, that frustration starts to creep in. So 2012, I started doing some part-time work, but it wasn't until this year that I just had to sort of shift my priorities. And what's funny is this year this has absolutely been my best year since I did Ferguson. 3 appearances on Adam Carolla. I just filmed an appearance on Comics Unleashed, which will, and this is without any manager or agent. I'll film I filmed the Comics Unleashed. My videos, my digital sales, my digital plays have all gone up from the exposure I've gotten from those things, and just various other featured things on the internet. But it's been a very good year in terms of exposure, but I'm getting less work in terms of comedy clubs, and, still no manager, still no agent. So it's like, and now I'm basically, working 50 hours a week on various legal projects because the money, it's very underrated how much having some money to pay your bills will ease your overall, tension. So it's a tough balance because you want to, I want to dedicate myself, 30 hours a week to writing sketches, writing blogs, looking to book gigs, working on my act. But I'm really only putting in about, doing the podcast, but I'm only putting in like 5 hours a week right now in terms of comedy because that's all I can afford to do because I've got to work this job to, now I'm out of debt, which is a positive, and I've lost like 40 pounds in the last 6 months, which was all a result of kind of that stress and depression that was setting in from kind of wanting to be a comedian, but not being able to fully fund it and not being able to make a living off of it. Only being, like I told somebody, I'm a full-time comedian making part-time wages.
Yeah.
And I know that I tried to throw a couple of jokes in there, but that's really, that the balance isn't there. Like, I'm not, because I don't have the energy to just, like I did when I was 25, to just put in 25 hours a week after my job to write, to perform. So, I'm still putting out the podcast once a week. I still put out a movie review every week. I'm trying to write a blog at least once a week so that there's something, but usually I was blogging like 3 times a week, and that was a good source of traffic for me also. But it's difficult because you just keep waiting and hoping to make that break, hoping that somebody sees you do something. And I keep getting emails and things like, I got an email from people at Howard Stern's show, and I'm not telling this to brag because I don't think it's going to lead to anything, but they wanted a reel of my impressions in case they could use me as like a celebrity call-in kind of, joke.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And that's, but at some point it's like 10 people can mention your name and they can be close to opportunities, but at some point you need something to hit or else it's just talk. So
what advice?
I don't even know if that answers your question. The answer is there is no balance.
There's nothing. No, I can relate as far as being a comedian and then having, taking out that stress on other people. I called my cat a cunt this morning before I left the house.
Oh, cats, but I got to be honest, cats do suck.
They do. Well, that's the thing with cats. Just to make it, to digress for a second, the problem with cats is that it's the pet that if you became very small would eat you right away, right? If I have a feeling if I had a dog and I got shrunk, like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the dog would still care for me. Whereas the cat would eat me in a second. I would just be fucking food for the cat.
A golden retriever might drown you by licking you.
With love. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. So your plan is, again, like, ideally you want to go full-time into stand-up, be a stand-up comedian, or are you trying to be a stand-up comedian? Or because you do a lot. I see a lot of your sketches, your podcasting, your blogging. Is stand-up your true passion? Are you more of a writer? Because you do have a great diverse amount of work out there.
Thank you. Well, that's... I'd like to think that one day, like one of the things, nobody's produced any of my stand-up albums, and I keep thinking one day I'm going to hit, so then I won't have to pay anybody a goddamn penny, and all those album sales will be 100% mine. But it's my dream is to do whatever it takes for me to be a headliner comedian at a comedy club. So if I've got to write a show or star in a show or have a hit podcast or a YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers. And by the way, I'm only 999,000 away from that lofty goal. I'll do whatever it takes because stand-up's the end game. Now, you can't, unfortunately, I've had meetings with managers where I've done that dreaded thing in entertainment and been honest about my goals. And I'm like, well, I like writing, I like acting. As you can see, I can do a lot of impressions. I feel like I could fit in right away on a Comedy Central sketch show or on SNL. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds like horseshit, but if you watch, the dozens of impressions I do and the writing, if I had, it'd be nice to have some kind of manager who could just act as a gatekeeper to get like a writing packet to someone. But stand-up's the end game. Like, it may not even be the biggest moneymaker when I'm all done with this, if some break happens in terms of acting or writing. But it's the thing I want to do most.
Yeah. Speaking of sketches, this is Kevin over here from The Last Gentleman. You came on my radar from the Adam Carolla sketch and your appearance in Adam Carolla, which is genius. The Podcast Academy. Oh God. Best line is every prostitute who's ever sucked a dick writing a memoir right now. Best. Now, how did you get on the Adam Carolla show? How was the process from there? It's just the video went viral, and when Mike August saw you, or like how was it?
The great thing about that is that's one of those examples where as harsh as I can be to social media, Carolla really does look at his tweets. Yeah. And I tweeted him because it was, the impressions in that web series kind of ranged from brutal takedowns to humorously complimentary. And his was on the humorously complimentary side. Yeah, yeah. And so it was really more like, hey, I can do this impression of you. I'm not shitting on you. I just can do an impression, and it's going to be kind of fun with you teaching all these young wannabe comedians how to be a podcaster. So I think he watched it, and I saw that he favorited it. Yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. He probably maybe he just did that as a token gesture. But then I found out when he favorites something, it means he watched it or read it and wants Gary, one of his assistant producers, to keep stock of it. So then Mike August emailed me a day or two later and said, your Carolla impression is very Carolla-y. We like it. We'd like you to would you be willing to maybe make a video starring him to help out with the patent troll campaign. So I ended up making one, and they said, we'll bring you on the show. And that really was a bigger highlight for me than being on Ferguson. As huge a highlight as Ferguson was, this was my first opportunity back on something significant in 6 years. Yeah. And 7 years. And it was it was all earned by me. I made the video. It was my impression skills that got me noticed, and I sent it to him. So there was no management. So it really was a very proud moment, considering that I'm a huge fan of his podcast. So that was a super, super highlight. And, and I did well. I did some impressions for them. The
live reads?
Well, that was the second appearance, because I did another video, went back out there, did the live read, which everybody enjoyed, except for 3 people.
Oh, fuck them!
I don't know why. There was always 3 people fuck this guy, and I'm like, really? We're on the same side. We're both Carolla fans. Carolla vouches for me. I get it if you're neutral, but it's weird to think that there's people I fucking hate this guest, and I'm like, wow.
Well, not just
and then I was on the third time, so that was that was great to kind of build, hopefully, a relationship with the show.
And that's quite the compliment to be on Carolla's radar, because you know how no one could do an impression of him. It's always, nah, sheetrock, plywood, nails. Not too many people could do it. And also with sketches, like you mentioned SNL, is that something maybe, like if you ever had the offer, is that something you would love to do as well? I know you've had some recent rants on your podcast regarding SNL and new addition to the cast. Is that something that's on your radar?
Yeah, last year after the CK video got me a lot of notice, I actually had a reel of my stuff sent to SNL. Like, I had to fill out a release and everything. And the problem is, nothing happened for me this year because I thought, hey, I've got a lot more impressions to showcase. Maybe I'm on their radar. SNL would be, literally would be the dream above anything else. Because it's exactly what I'm best at. In terms, the two things I'm best at are, even though, people like the podcast and I can write very well, it's like the two things I'm best at, I feel like, based on also practice, are sketch stuff and stand-up. So obviously if I was on SNL, I'd immediately be a headliner at all the A rooms whenever we weren't doing SNL. So it would be like the dream life for me. Mm-hmm. But I also know that I'm 35, and I know that shows like that are generally looking to discover new talent, yet moldable new talent. Like Pete Davidson's a good example, and everybody seems to be enjoying him, and that's great. But that's like a 21-year-old or 20-year-old or 22-year-old, however old he is, with quote-unquote it. Like, they see something in him and they're going to make him what they want him to be. Whereas I feel like, for better or worse, here, let me put it this way, if I'm not boring your listeners. I feel like in comedy, there's two big things people look for. Young people with it that they can mold into what they want, or older people with an established brand that's already making money. But if you are an established brand that isn't a self-generating cash machine, I feel like that's like, in an odd way, even if you're good, you rank third on the list of what people are actually looking for. Because I've had a couple of friends who've become very successful on their own, but they were already doing well on their own, like headlining clubs, making viral videos. And then management kind of came in and said, okay, we're ready to take you, the last 15% of the way towards celebrity. Or they take some young buck who's like, hey, we think you have a spark. We're gonna get you out there. We're gonna flood the market with you. We're gonna make you a known quantity, and we're gonna direct your career because you're like a fresh piece of clay to be molded. But if you are you know what I mean? So, but if you're neither of those, it's not. I just my instincts tell me that it's not necessarily what people are looking for. Mm-hmm. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just a dick.
No, I understand it. I feel that with whenever I do watch SNL, I do feel that if it's not the crappy musical guest that's on, it's just a lackluster. I don't know. I just feel that the impressionists aren't as good as some of the people out there. I feel that you would be better than anybody on that show if you were given the opportunity. But they seem to overlook talent in place of what the next possible young hot stud could be, so to speak.
I just found out what words I want the next chick I hook up with to say. I just got hard hearing that.
Well, I'm glad to help. I do have a question for you.
Oh, man. It's not, to me, and I understand that it's not just about impressions, because I think one of the most difficult things on a show like that is to create great original characters. That's where I might be lacking. I think I could, I think I have a brain enough to parody, lots of things out there. I did a sketch that wasn't a huge hit, but it was making fun of regional Comic-Cons, because everybody knows San Diego is the real Comic-Con, and then New York has a substantial one. But then you're just you'll see people posting on Facebook hey, come to the Newark Comic-Con, come to the Tampa Comic-Con, come to the
Tulsa,
Ohio Comic-Con. Right. Yep. So you see that and you go, so I made so I know I have it in me to at least write, relevant parodies that aren't, impression based.
Mm-hmm.
But like something like Will Ferrell or Bill Hader, like what makes them so incredible is that, they did some impressions. Hader probably the better of the two, but like they could create amazing original characters, which I think is the toughest thing about that. But I feel like the current SNL, not to shit on my future employer, I hope, not going to happen.
That's okay.
But it's I feel like there's neither right now. I feel like Jay Farrow definitely has some really good impressions, but overall, I just don't see those kind of repeatable original characters that become like, oh yeah, like Stefan or the cheerleaders or whatever. But I also don't see a ton of like amazing impressions. And they're not using the Kate McKinnon chick. Everybody keeps complaining, and they're right. Like she was their breakout star last year, and it's like she's on sabbatical this year.
Yeah, I feel that they don't do as well as, like, I used to be a big fan of Mad TV. I felt Mad TV did a really good job of creating original characters that you become interested in, so to speak.
And that makes me think, to quote Carolla, competition, you need competition to do something good.
Yeah, exactly.
That really wasn't a quote. That was more just a paraphrase. But Mad TV may have probably helped SNL because there was an alternative, and it didn't beat SNL, but it was an alternative for people to go, hey, you know what, I kind of like the fucking Stewart character, or I like Will Sasso's impression, or Frank Caliendo. Like, they had some good people working on that show, and I think when that went under, it was just kind of like, okay, now we're okay again. We're safe. There's no competition.
Why do you think sketch comedy hasn't... I see sketch comedy now something more on the internet. I thought back in the heyday we had some great shows, like we had SNL going, Mad TV, there's Kids in the Hall.
Living Color.
In Living Color.
In Living Color. What a beat
that was a great show.
Do you think sketch comedy could have kind of a big comeback, or do you think it's going to be stuck online now?
That's a good question, because all these places, half of what TV shows like that are trying to do is get their online numbers up because they know how young people watch. So it's like, you'll see Key and Peele have millions and millions of YouTube views. Like, half of these people probably don't even watch the show. They probably just watch the sketches like it's a YouTube channel. So I think, yeah, and the thing is, sketch comedy really is, it works on the internet level. It's not like, watching a full-length drama or sitcom where you kind of still want to watch it on your TV. Yeah. Like, sketch comedy is, because sketch comedy, you can split up an episode of SNL into 8 YouTube videos or, NBC.com videos, and it feels natural. I still think sketch comedy, for some people, is probably like the attractive cousin of improv, and nobody likes improv.
No.
Yeah, fuck improv.
God, improv is so disgusting.
Improv is gross. It makes me infuriated. It's fun to do, but how dare you charge me for this? That's what
if I can offer a Carolla-ism, but it's my own, I always say, great improv is okay.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, the greatest improv is like passable entertainment.
And once in a while, and it's always way better to the people doing the improv than it is to anyone ever else ever anywhere. It makes me upset. I wanted to ask you one more question before we wrap it up for today. Sure. Have you heard in Canada? So you're talking to mostly a Canadian listenership here on the Last Gentleman podcast. Now in Canada,
my full name, by the way, since you guys can probably pronounce it, is Jean-Louis. Down in the States, on JL, way too many Jean Lewises.
You'd still get it down here. The French part of Canada is very cunty. Yeah, that's
we don't like them.
A lot of cats, huh?
Yeah, a lot of cats down in French Canada. Now we have this huge, one of our biggest news celebrities, news reporters here in Canada is a gentleman by the name of Jian Ghomeshi. Jian has recently been fired by the CBC, and the CBC is like the BBC, but it's in Canada and it's funded by the government. It's kind of like a socialist propaganda wing of the Queen's. He was fired for BDSM, essentially, and rape allegations, sexual assault allegations. We had a number of women.
Hey, you know what I always say to those things? Don't hate the player, hate the game.
So he had a number of women come forward saying that he would do this to them, which is he would bring them he would go on a normal date. They would go out and have dinner. He would invite them back to his house, and then he would show them a bear. And this bear he called it Big Ears Teddy. And he went so far as to thank Big Ears Teddy in his memoir. He took it on the road with him. When he won an award in Canada, he thanked this bear. And what he's reported to have done, allegedly by his victims, is he would introduce the bear to the women, then turn him around and say, Big Ears Bear shouldn't see this, and then proceed to punch the women. He'd throw shots at them. He was fired by the CBC because he actually brought a tape to the CBC and showed them that his bondage stuff was consensual. Now he's got a shitload of allegations against them. Has this guy come? Have you heard anything about this in New York? Is this news made the U.S. yet?
I have not heard about this man at all. I think we've been too obsessed with Rob Ford to deal with any other Canadian hilarious celebrities.
It's too bad. Rob Ford was just defeated. He was mayor of Toronto a week ago. Right. He has some sort of mega cancer and was dropped out of the race and no longer is running. I don't think he can be mayor. Apparently, he came forward and said that the chemotherapy's not working for him. What was kind of amazing about Ford here is the type of cancer he has is very rare. Only 2% of people get this cancer, and it's typically only found within people who have been near radiation or have been exposed to radioactive materials.
Third chin cancer.
It's third chin cancer. JL, where can people find your material, find your stuff? Let's sell some shit right now.
Awesome. Well, yes, I'd love, the way I always tell people, first, I guess, let people sample the stuff that's free. The YouTube channel, I think people could spend hours on if they're bored and enjoy themselves. That's youtube.com/JLCAUVIN. On Twitter, I am at JLCAUVIN. The website, JLCAUVIN.com, has, the blogs. A lot of the videos are there. My web series is there. But the things I'd really like are basically subscribers, to keep getting subscribers to the YouTube channel. And then the way I basically fund everything, the podcast every Tuesday is on iTunes and Stitcher, Righteous Prick with JL Cauvin. All things can be kind of linked. Everything can be found through my website, so people don't have to go to like 9 different sites to get all the stuff. But the way I fund everything is basically, I've got 4 albums available on iTunes, Google Play. They're all on Pandora and Spotify.
Yeah,
it's just buy an album, buy 2 if you like my comedy, because I still say the stand up is the best stuff I do. And that's basically where I hope to fund all the other free shit I put out, is just because then it's not just asking people for a donation through PayPal. It's like, yeah, buy the album. You get the album, it's worth it on its own, and then I just funnel that money into continuing my cycle of death.
Yeah, it's a good way to fuel it, though. You got to fuel death with cash. That's the only way it works, I think. So, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
We're gonna encourage everyone to listen to your podcast and check out your stand-up comedy. You have 4 albums. Which one should we be checking out first?
I would say, in truth, Too Big to Fail is a good one to buy first, but I would be honest. Keep My Enemies Closer is my best. But I would say, this is so weird selling this way. Here's the shittiest album I have. In other words, Racial Chameleon is my first album, and it did very well, relatively speaking. And that's a little more that was when I was still doing a lot of impressions in my stand-up, and it's a little more lighthearted, but it's still good. But after that, Diamond Maker, I listened to recently just out of curiosity to see how much I would hate it, just knowing that it was, several years old. That one's real good. And from then on, it's like Diamond Maker is excellent. Too Big to Fail is excellent. And Keep My Enemies Closer is, the only reason I say don't buy that one first is because a friend of mine who's a comedian who listened to it said it's going to make your other albums not feel as good as they are because it's the best one. But, take it for what it's worth. I'd say, just if you're going to buy one, if you want to buy the best one, be my guest, but they're all good. So that was a horrible sales pitch. So
I'm confused.
I will now sell zero.
I'm confused and alone right now. It's not the best way to pitch, but we're gonna definitely check out your stuff. Thank you again, JL, and
thank you.
I encourage everyone at the end of this episode as well to
people
check
can
out
listen
stuff.
obviously on Pandora or Spotify. Like if you just want to buy Keep My Enemies Closer and then listen to the other ones, on a cheaper or free service, I still get, some credit for plays. So,
great.
I think that's the
Sounds
smart.
good.
So Spotify, we can check your stuff out as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, JL. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.